The pharmacy was crowded that morning, a mix of impatient sighs, rustling bags, and the quiet hum of background music that no one really listened to. Behind the counter, the pharmacist scanned prescription bottles while customers waited for their turn. Among them stood a teenage boy, maybe 15 or 16, holding a crumpled paper in one hand and his mother's trembling fingers in the other. His mother, a small woman with tired eyes and a scarf wrapped loosely around her head, didn't speak much English. Her name was Rosa. She had moved to the U.S. from Guatemala years ago, working double shifts cleaning offices, trying to give her son, Elias, a better life. But now, her health was failing. The paper Elias held was a prescription for medication she needed but couldn't afford without help. "Mom, it's okay," Elias whispered in Spanish, his voice shaking. "I'll talk to them. I'll make them understand." He looked up at the pharmacist and said, "Hi, my mom, she needs this medicine. But she doesn't understand English well. Can you tell us how much it costs?" The pharmacist checked the system, then sighed. "Without insurance, it's $423. Elias froze. His throat tightened. His mother didn't need to understand English to read his face. She placed her hand over his and asked quietly, "Cuánto?" Elias didn't want to say it, but she pressed. Finally, he murmured, "Mucho, mama." "Too much." Rosa lowered her eyes. The pain in her chest wasn't just from illness, it was from helplessness. She had cleaned the houses of wealthy families for years, watched their kids grow, seen their dogs wearing coats that probably cost more than her rent. Yet, when it came to something as simple as her medicine, she couldn't afford it. As Elias tried to explain in broken English if there was any cheaper option, someone behind them scoffed. "Maybe learn the language before coming here," a man muttered under his breath. Elias's shoulders stiffened. He turned, ready to respond, but before he could, another voice joined in, low and curious. "Hey, easy there," the man said. "They're trying to get medicine, not start trouble." Elias turned toward the speaker. It was a man in his 40s, dressed sharply in a tailored coat and watch that gleamed under the store lights. Everything about him screamed wealth, clean shoes, calm confidence, and the kind of ease that came with never worrying about bills. He was scrolling through his phone, clearly detached, yet somehow his presence filled the room. The pharmacist handed the bag to someone else and called out, "Next." Elias and Rosa stepped aside, trying to figure out what to do. The man in the coat, who everyone seemed to recognize but no one approached, moved closer to pay for his own items. He placed a bottle of water and a protein bar on the counter. Elias overheard the cashier whisper to a coworker, "That's Daniel Reeves. You know, the real estate guy. Millionaire, owns half of downtown." Elias had heard the name before. Daniel Reeves, self-made businessman, philanthropist, man of success. But right now, all Elias saw was someone who looked like he could afford his mom's medicine 1,000 times over, and still wouldn't notice. Daniel noticed the boy staring. He raised an eyebrow. "What's wrong, kid?" Elias swallowed. "Nothing. Just, trying to help my mom." Daniel's gaze softened slightly. "Medicine?" Elias nodded. "She doesn't speak English. I translate everything for her." Daniel chuckled, not unkindly but with an amused tone. "You translate medicine? That's a tough job for someone your age." Elias forced a smile, but Daniel's words stung. To him, it wasn't a joke. It was survival. He wasn't translating for fun, he was translating for his mother's life. "Yeah," Elias said quietly. "I do it because she can't read the labels. She gets scared of taking the wrong pill. I help her with everything, doctor visits, bills, even job interviews sometimes." Daniel seemed surprised. "That's a lot for a kid." Elias shrugged. "It's just life." Daniel nodded and turned back to pay, but something in Elias's tone lingered. The cashier handed him his receipt, and as he walked out, Daniel glanced back one more time. Rosa and Elias were still at the counter, whispering to the pharmacist, desperate and tired. Something tugged at Daniel, an old memory, maybe, but he shook it off and left. Outside, the air was cold. His car, a black Range Rover, waited by the curb. As Daniel slid in, he could still hear the faint voice of the boy saying, "Please, can we just get a smaller amount?" He started the engine but didn't drive. Instead, he stared at his reflection in the rearview mirror. For the first time in years, he remembered the smell of the small diner where his mother used to work, how she'd come home in the same uniform, hands smelling like dish soap, exhaustion in every bone. He remembered how she used to whisper, "One day, Danny, you'll make it big. But never forget what it's like to have nothing." He hadn't thought about that in years. Meanwhile, inside the pharmacy, Rosa was quietly crying. Elias tried to comfort her, but his voice cracked too. "It's okay, Mama. We'll find a way." They stepped outside, the cold wind biting their cheeks. Rosa coughed harshly, clutching her chest. Elias panicked. "Mom, sit down." He guided her to a bench outside the pharmacy. "You need to rest." Her face was pale, sweat glistening on her forehead. Elias pulled out his phone and searched for nearby clinics, but everything cost money. He looked up when a shadow fell over them. It was Daniel. "Hey," he said quietly, holding a small white bag, the kind the pharmacy used for prescriptions. "You forgot something." Elias frowned. "What?" Daniel handed him the bag. "Your mom's medicine." Elias blinked, confused. "What, how?" Daniel smiled faintly. "I paid for it." Elias stared at him, speechless. "Why would you?" Daniel shrugged. "Because someone once helped my mom when I couldn't. She was sick, like yours. And I couldn't afford her medicine either." Rosa didn't understand the words, but she saw the look in Daniel's eyes, the sincerity. Tears welled up as she whispered in Spanish, "Dios te bendiga." Elias translated softly. She said, "God bless you." Daniel smiled again, but there was something deeper in his eyes now, regret, perhaps. Tell her she already did. He turned to leave, but Rosa reached out and gently grabbed his sleeve. She said something in Spanish that Elias translated, "She wants to know your name." Daniel hesitated. "Daniel Reeves." Elias's eyes widened. "The real estate guy?" Daniel chuckled softly. "Yeah, that's me. But right now, I'm just a guy who remembers what it's like to be scared." He turned and walked toward his car, but Elias ran after him. "Wait. Thank you, really. You don't know what this means." Daniel looked at the boy for a long moment. "Actually, I do." As Daniel drove away, Elias and Rosa watched the car disappear into traffic. Rosa clutched the bag to her chest, whispering another prayer under her breath. But the story didn't end there. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the boy and his mother, their faces, their desperation, the quiet dignity they carried despite it all. He thought about his own mother, long gone now, and how he promised to do good when he could. Somewhere along the way, he had replaced good with success, and they hadn't meant the same thing. The next morning, Daniel made a call to his assistant. "Find out who that boy was, the one from the pharmacy. His name's Elias. I don't know his last name, but figure it out." His assistant sounded puzzled. "Sir, may I ask why?" Daniel stared out the window at the city skyline. "Because I think it's time I remembered where I came from." 2 days later, Daniel's black SUV pulled up outside a small apartment complex in a struggling neighborhood. Peeling paint, broken steps, and a rusted fence framed the building. He stepped out, feeling strangely out of place in his suit. He knocked on door 2B. Elias opened it, shocked to see him. Mr. Reeves? Hey, Daniel said with a small smile. Can I come in? Elias hesitated, then nodded, moving aside. The apartment was small but clean. Rosa sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching a Spanish soap opera. She smiled shyly when she saw Daniel. I just came to check how she's doing, he said. She's better, Elias replied. The medicine helped. Thank you again. Daniel looked around the modest apartment, the pictures on the wall, a cross above the door, a calendar with hand-marked paydays. It reminded him of home. He sat down. Elias, you said you translate everything for your mom, right? Elias nodded. Yeah. I've been doing it since I was 9. Daniel leaned forward. You ever think about doing something with that? Languages, maybe school? Elias laughed weakly. I'd love to. But college, it's expensive. I'm just trying to get through high school. Daniel smiled slowly. What if someone helped with that? Elias froze. What do you mean? Daniel reached into his jacket and handed him a card. My foundation helps kids like you, smart, hardworking, but short on chances. I want you to apply. And I want you to know something, don't ever feel ashamed of helping your mom. That's not weakness. That's love. Elias stared at the card, his voice trembling. You'd really do that? Daniel nodded. I already did. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time that week. Rosa wiped her eyes, whispering softly in Spanish. Elias translated once more, she said you're an angel. Daniel smiled. Tell her I'm just someone trying to earn his wings. But this visit wasn't the end, only the beginning of something that would change all their lives forever. Weeks passed after Daniel's visit, and the world of Elias and his mother slowly began to shift. Rosa's health improved little by little. The medicine Daniel had bought wasn't just a cure for her illness, it was the start of something neither of them had expected, hope. Elias kept Daniel's card in his backpack. Sometimes, when school felt overwhelming or his mom's coughing worried him again, he'd take it out and just stare at it. That small piece of paper reminded him that someone out there believed in him. But life didn't suddenly turn easy. Rosa still cleaned houses for a living, working long hours. Elias still balanced school with part-time shifts at a small grocery store nearby. Yet, there was a difference now, he had direction. Every night, he studied harder, pushing himself, not because someone told him to, but because for the first time, he felt he could actually make something of himself. Then one day, the phone rang. It was Daniel's assistant, Ava. Elias, she said warmly, Mr. Reeves asked me to check on you and your mother. He also wanted to invite you to his office downtown this Friday if you're available. Elias almost dropped the phone. Me? His office? Yes, Ava chuckled. He said he has something important to discuss. Elias hung up, heart pounding. Rosa, who had been folding laundry, looked at him with concern. ¿Qué pasa? Mama, Elias said in awe, he wants to see us again. That Friday, Elias wore his only formal shirt, a light blue button-up that had once been too big but now fit him just right. Rosa insisted on coming, though she was nervous. They took the bus to downtown, and when they arrived, Rosa's eyes widened at the tall glass building with Daniel's name engraved near the entrance, Reeves Development Group. Inside, the marble floors gleamed like mirrors. The receptionist smiled, recognizing their names. Mr. Reeves is expecting you. When they entered Daniel's office, it felt like stepping into another world. The city stretched beneath them through wide windows. Daniel stood near his desk, hands in his pockets, smiling genuinely as they approached. Elias, Mrs. Hernandez, good to see you both, he greeted. Rosa smiled nervously, glancing around. She whispered something to Elias. She says your office is beautiful, Elias translated. Daniel chuckled. Tell her thank you, and that I like her scarf. That broke the ice. Rosa laughed softly. After a few moments of small talk, Daniel sat down and gestured for Elias to do the same. Elias, I've been thinking about you since we met, he began. You reminded me of, well, me. When I was your age, I was helping my mother just like you do. Life didn't hand me much either. But someone gave me a chance. Elias listened intently. I want to do the same for you, Daniel continued. I talked to my foundation. They've agreed to sponsor a full scholarship for you when you graduate. Not just tuition, everything. Books, housing, even your mother's health insurance for the first year. Elias's mouth fell open. You're serious? Completely. Rosa didn't understand the words, but she saw her son's tears. ¿Qué pasó, mi hijo? Elias turned to her, voice trembling. Mama, he's paying for my college. Everything. Rosa gasped, covering her mouth. Her eyes filled instantly. She stood up and went to Daniel, placing her hands on his arm. She spoke quickly in Spanish, tears falling freely. Elias translated through his own sobs. She says, she prayed every night for a miracle. She says maybe you are the answer. Daniel swallowed hard, emotions rising in his chest. He hadn't expected her words to hit that deep. Tell her she's the miracle, he whispered. Her strength is what made you who you are. Rosa didn't need translation this time, she understood his tone, his kindness. Over the next few months, Daniel kept his promise. He visited occasionally, sometimes bringing groceries, sometimes just sitting with Rosa while Elias was at school. To everyone's surprise, he and Rosa formed a quiet friendship. Daniel practiced a few Spanish words every visit, fumbling but trying. Rosa would laugh and correct him patiently. Elias noticed that Daniel seemed different with them, softer, more human than the man people saw on TV or in business meetings. But behind Daniel's calm demeanor, he carried a guilt that never fully faded. His mother, Margaret Reeves, had died when he was young, sick and uninsured. He had worked his way out of poverty, but he had never forgiven himself for not being able to save her back then. Seeing Rosa and Elias gave him something he didn't know he was missing, a second chance to do right. One evening, Daniel invited Elias to a charity gala his foundation hosted every year. Elias was nervous, it was his first time at such a fancy event. Rosa insisted he go, even though she couldn't attend. When he arrived, Daniel greeted him proudly. You look sharp, Elias. Thanks, Mr. Reeves. This is, wow. I've never seen anything like this. The event hall was filled with businessmen, celebrities, and donors. Cameras flashed. Waiters carried trays of champagne. Daniel led Elias through the crowd and whispered, You're going to help me with something tonight. Elias blinked. Me? Daniel nodded. Yeah. I want people here to see what our foundation really stands for. I can talk numbers all night, but stories, that's what moves hearts. And yours deserves to be heard. Elias hesitated, heart pounding. You mean speak? In front of all these people? You'll do great, Daniel assured. Just be honest. When it was time, Daniel stepped on stage. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I don't want to talk about profits or buildings. I want to talk about people. About what real change looks like. And to help me do that, I'd like to invite someone special. He gestured toward Elias. The boy walked up slowly, palms sweating. The room fell silent. Hi, Elias began nervously. My name's Elias Hernandez. I'm 16. My mom and I came here from Guatemala when I was little. She doesn't speak English, so I've always translated everything for her, school forms, doctors, even her medicine. A few months ago, she got really sick, and we couldn't afford the treatment. Then I met Mr. Reeves. He looked toward Daniel, then back at the audience. He didn't just buy her medicine. He gave us hope. He made me believe people still care. The crowd listened quietly. Some were visibly moved. Elias's voice steadied as he continued. I used to think people like him didn't see people like us. But he did. And now I want to study medicine one day, not just to repay him, but to help families like mine who get lost in translation. There was a moment of silence before the entire hall erupted in applause. Daniel smiled proudly, clapping along, his eyes glistening. For the first time in years, he felt his mother's presence in that room, as if she was smiling down, whispering, "You finally remembered who you are." After the event, Daniel found Elias standing by the balcony, looking out at the city lights. "You did great," Daniel said. Elias smiled shyly. "I was so nervous I almost forgot how to breathe." Daniel laughed softly. "Well, you made everyone in there cry, including me." Elias looked up at him. "Mr. Reeves, why did you help us?" "Really?" Daniel grew quiet. "Because once, I was you. My mom didn't speak English well either. We struggled. She died before I could give her the life she deserved. When I saw you and your mom at that pharmacy, it felt like life was giving me a second chance, to do for someone else what I couldn't do for her." Elias nodded slowly, understanding. "Then maybe she sent you to us." Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe she did." Over time, Daniel's visits became more frequent. He helped Elias prepare for college applications, arranged tutoring, and even got Rosa a job cleaning offices in one of his own buildings, with full benefits. She refused charity but accepted the job proudly, working fewer hours but with better pay. Daniel would stop by occasionally, chatting with her in broken Spanish. "Trabajo, bueno?" he'd ask. Rosa would laugh, correcting him, "El trabajo es bueno." Years later, Elias graduated high school with honors. Daniel sat beside Rosa at the ceremony, clapping the loudest when Elias's name was called. Rosa wept openly, clutching Daniel's hand as her son walked across the stage. "Gracias, Señor Reeves," she whispered. He squeezed her hand. "No, Rosa. Thank you." As Elias prepared for college that fall, Daniel threw a small farewell dinner for him. The night was filled with laughter, food, and warmth. Before Elias left, Daniel handed him an envelope. "What's this?" Elias asked. "Something your mom shouldn't have to translate," Daniel said with a grin. Inside was a handwritten note and a check, not for money, but for mentorship. It read, "The world needs more people like you, Elias. Remember, success means nothing if you forget compassion. Never stop translating kindness. Daniel Reeves." Tears filled Elias's eyes as he hugged Daniel tightly. "I won't let you down," he whispered. Daniel smiled, his voice thick with emotion. "You already haven't." Years later, Elias did become a doctor, specializing in immigrant healthcare, focusing on bridging language gaps in medicine. His story was featured in local news, and when reporters asked how it all began, he smiled softly and said, "It started the day a millionaire laughed at me translating my mother's medicine, and then did something no one expected, he helped." By then, Daniel had retired, spending his time volunteering at community centers, mentoring young people. He would watch Elias on TV, pride swelling in his chest. And though the world saw him as a man of wealth, only he knew that the greatest investment he ever made wasn't in real estate or business. It was in a boy and his mother, whose faith reminded him that true success is measured not by how much you earn, but how much you give back.